Welcome back. So now that we've created the world's cutest little dungeon, we're going to start working on the next major section of the course. Now, don't worry, this is not the final and only level. We'll do more with levels as we go, but our game is ready to start incorporating some more RPG elements to it, such as experience, other spells, and leveling up. Now, in this section, we're going to add more to our HUD, as 2 health globes is nice and they look good, but we need more here. We need at least an XP bar, XP being short for experience. If you aren't familiar with XP, I'll be referring to experience points as XP throughout the rest of the course. So we need a game plan, and the design that I'd like to go for our HUD is going to look something like this. So I'm going to want my health globes on either side with some little mini globes down here in the middle, and these will represent the spells that we have equipped and will show which inputs they're assigned to currently. And here we have a couple of other globes for our passive spells, which we haven't made yet, but this is something like what I'd like to make. Now, the way that I'd like to make this is with a bunch of boxes, and I'd like to specify the sizes of those boxes. So what I'm going to do is go into my blueprints folder, into UI, and this is going into the overlay. So I think I'll go into the overlay folder and into sub-widgets, where we'll have our sub-widgets that will go into the overlay. So for this widget, I'm going to right-click, go to User Interface, create a widget blueprint, and choose Aura User Widget. And I'm going to call this WBP Health Mana Spells. It's going to have XP in there as well, but I think Health Mana Spells is a good enough name. And for the widget, I'm just going to start by adding a whole bunch of boxes, and then we'll fill in those boxes with things. Now, instead of fill screen, I'm going to set this to custom. And the width is going to be about 1140, 1141. And the height is going to be 216. These are just values that I've found work for me. And as soon as we drag in some boxes, we'll see that size. I'm going to start with an overlay and call this overlay root. And now we see the size here. This is going to be about the size that I like. And I'm just going to add a whole bunch of boxes. So I'm going to start with a base box. It's going to be a horizontal box. I'm going to drag that on in. And the horizontal box is going to be set to fill for horizontal and vertical. And I'm going to rename this to base box. And all the other things will go inside base box. So I'm going to place a few more boxes in here. I'll start with 3 main boxes. 1, 2, 3. The first one is going to hold my health globe, so I'm going to call it health box. The second is going to be the central box, so I'll just call it central box. And the rightmost box will be the mana box. Now, these are all going to be set to fill. So for size up here, I'm going to choose fill for all 3. And by default, they'll fill up as much space as they can. So I'm going to set a fraction of the size that I'd like them to fill. I'd like the 2 outermost boxes to fill up 0.2 and the innermost box 0.6. So that's pretty much going to give me the dimensions I want. Now, inside the central box, we're going to have some more boxes, so we'll need a couple more. Now, they're going to fill in from left to right, but these boxes are going to be vertical boxes, so the things that go in them will fill in vertically. So I'm going to drag in 1, 2 boxes. I'm going to set them both to fill. And the first box is going to hold my offensive spells. So I'm going to call this one offensive box. And this one will be for passive spells. I'm going to call it passive box. And the offensive box is going to fill most of the space. I'm going to set the size to fill 0.9 of the space, and the passive box will fill 0.1, 10% of the space. Now the offensive box is going to have some boxes inside of it. I'm basically going to have a row up on the top for labels. And bringing over my plans here, here's what I'm talking about. It's going to be one box here, another central box for the spells, and some spacer down there. So we're going to have 3 more boxes here. Now the topmost box is going to be a vertical box. This one is going to be above the icons. So I'm going to call this above icons box. And we're going to have the actual icons themselves. Now this one is going to be horizontal, so we can have the spells laid out horizontally next to each other. So this one will be called spell icons box, or it could even be spell globes box, as they're going to be globes. And then finally, we'll have one more box beneath it, and this will be a spacer box. So all 3 of these are going to fill. Above the icons is going to take up 1/3 of the space, so I'm going to give it 0.3. The spell icons themselves are going to take up about half. I'm going to make it a little less, 0.45. And the spacer box is going to take up 1/3 of the space, 0.3. And so we have something like this. Now, above icons box is going to get 2 boxes of its own, one that says offensive, so we know this is offensive spells, and then another box beneath it that has all of the input labels. So I'm going to add 2 more boxes. They'll fill up from top to bottom, so 1 and 2, and this one is going to be offensive text, which sounds like something kind of rude, but it really is just text that will say offensive literally. And the next box beneath it is going to be input text. So it shows the inputs. So offensive text can be fill, input text can be fill, but we may set this to auto so that the top part fills as much as it can. Now, spell globes box is going to be filled up with globes, and spacer box is going to be empty. So we'll get to that. But for now, we have a whole bunch of boxes and we can start putting things in them. Now, the health box can get our health globe widget. So if we search for WBP health, we can just drag a health globe into here. And if we choose fill, it'll be put just about at the right size. Now, WBP health globe should be red. So let's take a look at that widget. We're going to go to the progress bar. And it looks like WBP health globe actually has blue by default. So let's search for globe properties. And we can change that progress bar brush to MI health globe. So that looks good. And I think I just like the percent on my globes to be 100% by default so they look full. So I'm going to go ahead and get my progress bar globe and set the percent all the way up for that. Same for the ghost as well. And compile that. And now our health globe looks better. And here in our widget, it looks really nice. Now I'd like my mana globe in here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and drag one of those in and set it to fill as well, like so. Okay, so this is a great start. Now, while I'm at it here, I could just put some text in the offensive text box. So I'm going to search for text and drag it on in here. And for this text, I'm going to set horizontal alignment to center and vertical alignment to the bottom, clicking on fill. And I'm going to change the font to Amaranth Regular, change the size to 14. I'd like a different color and opacity. A color that I like is 0.649028 for red, 0.338234 for blue, and actually that last number was green. Red should be just 1. I'm going to use this color for my text. And I'm going to give it an outline size of 1, so it has the outline there. And I'm going to set some text for it. It's going to say offensive. And we'll have passive right here. So my passive box can itself have a couple of boxes. So I'm just going to grab a couple more vertical boxes and drag them in here. Just 2 for now. And I'll call the top one passive text and the bottom one passive boxes. Passive text and passive boxes can both be set to fill, and passive text will take up 20%. So it'll take 0.2 here, this one gets 0.8, and I'll put some text. I'm actually going to copy the offensive text and paste it here and call it passive text, or text underscore passive. How about that? Offensive can be text underscore offensive. And I'm going to change the passive text to say passive. And look at that, it barely fits. And I'm going to set it to fill horizontally and vertically. And set its justification to center. Actually, that doesn't look quite right, so I'm going to set it to vertical alignment to bottom. And we'll just keep horizontal alignment to center. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And what we need now are some globes to show all of our different spells. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse a lot of these boxes, as this can get quite overwhelming. And right here, our input text. I'd actually like to just put the inputs here evenly spaced out. So once again, I'm just going to fill this in with a bunch of boxes. They can be horizontal or vertical. And I'm going to have 6 of them here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And selecting all of them, I'm going to select fill. And these are going to each contain text. I'm not going to bother renaming any of them. I'm just going to drag in some text. And since I kind of want the same font, I'm going to just copy one of these. Offensive is fine. And select one of the boxes and paste it in. The difference is I'd like the font color to be white. But other than that, we have some text. Now this one is going to say LMB. So there's our left mouse button input. And I'll just call it text underscore LMB. And I'm going to copy it into each of these boxes. And all I need to do is change the text for each of them. This one will be RMB. We'll show our right mouse button spell there, followed by 1, 2, 3, and 4. Looks like they're named automatically almost perfectly. They just have LMB in their names. I'll go ahead and rename them to text 1, text 2, and so on. And it actually looks like this one is named 5, so just really quickly, I'm going to rename them properly. Okay, so now we have the numbers, and we really just want boxes for each of our spells. Now, yes, you could just put the widgets in there. You don't really have to organize them this much with boxes. With this particular widget, I just decided to map everything out with boxes. This is another way to do it, but it's a little more meticulous. But we have our spell globes box, and the spell globes box can really just have a bunch of boxes inside of it, each of which can contain one of our little globes that can show our spells. So I'm going to just put 6 boxes in here. They could be vertical or horizontal. So I'm going to just place them in here and set them all to fill. I'm going to call this first one spellbox underscore LMB. I'm going to drag in another one and call it spellbox RMB. And another one called spellbox 1. And then I'll have 2 through 4. So I'll go ahead and just quickly rename these. There we go. And now I can take all of these boxes and set them all to fill. like so. And now they're just waiting for those globe widgets. And the last thing here is a couple boxes in the passive boxes box. This is a vertical box, so we can place a couple boxes in here. I'll just really quickly place those in here. I'll just do 1, 2, and 3, and call this passive box 1, passive box 2, and we'll do a passive box spacer. And get these all filled, and we'll just make the bottom one fill less. We'll put it at 0.6 and leave the others at 1, and they should be relatively square. So now we have lots of boxes, and these are just dying to have widgets put in them. So next we need a nice globe widget for spell icons in our HUD. So we'll continue with that in the next video. Excellent job for now. Make sure to save all that work, as this was pretty tedious, but we now have set up a widget that can show a lot more information in our HUD. So excellent job, and I'll see you in the next video.